The hallway was filled with the echoes of laughter, sneakers squeaking against polished tiles, and the constant hum of teenage voices. It was the end of the school day, and clusters of students gathered around the blue lockers, whispering and chuckling as though they knew something about to happen. They had always ruled this place, those self-appointed kings and queens of cruelty, the bullies who believed that fear was the only language people should speak in these halls. For years, no teacher had truly stood up to them. Detentions didn't work, suspensions only fueled their pride, and warnings from the principal were treated like a joke. But none of them knew that the day a new teacher walked through those same hallways would change everything forever. Her name was Emily Carter, a young woman in her late 20s, with curly brown hair tied neatly behind her, bright determined eyes, and a quiet confidence that came from scars people couldn't see. She had accepted the job at Franklin High because she wanted to make a difference. She believed classrooms weren't just about equations and essays, but about shaping lives, protecting dignity, and planting seeds of courage. Yet she had been warned, even on her first day, that the school carried a shadow. A group of students, led by a cocky blonde boy named Ryan Mitchell, thought they owned the place. Teachers avoided confrontation, scared of backlash, and students simply kept their heads down, praying not to become the next target. Emily, however, wasn't like the others. She had grown up in a tough neighborhood, faced her own share of ridicule, and promised herself she would never again let cruelty go unchallenged. Still, she had no idea just how far these bullies were willing to go to test her resolve. It started subtly, snide remarks as she passed by, giggles when she turned her back, books accidentally dropped in the middle of her lesson. But on that afternoon, everything escalated. Emily was walking down the corridor carrying a stack of papers when suddenly Ryan and his group appeared in front of her. His smirk stretched wide, fueled by the crowd gathering behind them. "So, you're the new teacher everyone keeps talking about," Ryan sneered. "Let's see how tough you really are." Before she could respond, one of his friends yanked at her arm. Another reached for her hair. Gasps filled the hallway as they dragged her forward, pulling at her curls, trying to force her down. Students shrieked, some laughed nervously, others froze in disbelief. And then, in a humiliating spectacle, Ryan pushed her toward the floor, jeering loud enough for everyone to hear. "Crawl, teacher, crawl like you make us do in drills." The crowd roared, some clapping, others pulling out phones to record. The scene resembled cruelty dressed as entertainment, and for a split second, Emily's knees hit the cold tile. The sting of pain shot through her scalp, her papers scattered across the hallway, and she could hear the cruel laughter echoing like thunder. Any other teacher might have broken down in tears, run away to the principal's office, or shouted threats that no one would take seriously. But Emily did something none of them expected. She stayed on her knees, still for a moment, her face lowered, her breath steady. Ryan chuckled, leaning forward, thinking he had won. But then Emily slowly lifted her head. Her eyes, burning with a quiet fire, locked onto his. The laughter around them dimmed as people realized something had shifted. With deliberate calm, Emily pushed herself up, not just onto her feet, but onto her dignity. She smoothed her torn white blouse, brushed the dust from her blue skirt, and stood taller than Ryan despite being smaller in height. Her voice rang out, strong and unwavering. "You think power comes from dragging others down? Real power is standing tall when the world tries to keep you on the ground." The hallway fell into silence. Ryan's smirk faltered. He tried to cover it with a laugh, but his friends weren't laughing anymore. Emily took a step closer, unflinching, her eyes piercing through his bravado. "I will not crawl for you," she said, her voice carrying the weight of every student who had ever suffered under their cruelty. "But one day, you'll remember this moment, because you will realize you were never as strong as you pretended to be." Some of the students watching felt their throats tighten. For the first time, someone wasn't afraid. Emily bent down, not to crawl, but to gather her scattered papers with steady hands, and then, in one swift move, she held them up, looked directly at the crowd and said, "I'm still your teacher, and I will never let hate decide how this school is run." Her words sliced through the air, leaving even the bullies speechless. Ryan flushed red, trying to cover his embarrassment, but the eyes of the crowd told him he had already lost. His laugh sounded hollow now, his grip on power slipping away. Some of his own friends looked down, ashamed, realizing they had gone too far. Students who had once been silent victims suddenly felt a new spark inside them, a reminder that silence wasn't their only option. Over the weeks that followed, the story spread through Franklin High like wildfire. Emily didn't need to scream or punish. Her strength was her calm. When Ryan tried to intimidate her again, she looked at him the same way she had that day, fearless, steady, and unbroken. Soon, students who once feared speaking up began to share their own stories. A girl named Sarah Johnson, who had been mocked for her stutter, found the courage to raise her hand in class. A boy named Michael, who always ate lunch alone because of his weight, found friends sitting beside him, encouraged by Emily's lessons of dignity and kindness. Even Ryan, though slow to admit it, started skipping his usual games of cruelty. Because deep down, he knew he had been defeated not by force, but by something greater, grace. Emily Carter became more than a teacher, she became a symbol. Her response that day, refusing to crawl, refusing to break, reminded every student that bullies only win when people stay silent. And by choosing courage over humiliation, she gave her students a gift that no textbook could provide, the belief that they too could rise, even when dragged down. Years later, those who were there still remembered it. They spoke of the day a teacher was pulled by her hair, made to crawl, and yet stood taller than anyone else in that hallway. They remembered the hush in the air when laughter turned to silence, when cruelty turned to shame, and when fear turned into courage. Emily's swift, powerful response left not only the bullies speechless, but also lit a fire in the hearts of countless students who finally realized they were stronger than they ever knew. And so, the story of Franklin High wasn't about how bullies ruled the halls. It became the story of how one woman's refusal to bend changed everything, and how sometimes the most powerful lesson a teacher can give is taught not in the classroom, but in the courage to rise when others want you to crawl.